Today is a windy day, guys. In fact, it's so windy we even received a warning about the high-risk weather, and all of our plans about filming outside went outside of the window. Luckily, we have a lot of books on the shelf, and one of them is this one. One of the books on the shelf was 1000 Films You Must See Before You Die. And among many famous movies such as Terminator and Pulp Fiction, there are also some Czech movies there. So we decided to tell you about 7 Czech movies you must see before you die. Or if that sounds too depressing to you, just pretend it's 7 Czech films you must see while you're still alive. Let's start with the movie that all of your movie buffs in the comments are expecting to hear about. It's an Oscar-winning movie, closely watched Trains from 1966. The main character of the movie, Milos, who some people say resembles Buster Keaton, gets a new job at the train station that he's very excited about, because it allows him to look important and doesn't require a lot of effort. Milos is also deeply in love with a conductor from a small local train. But their relationship, how should I put it, has some bumps on the road. All of that so far might sound like a typical story that happens in a small town in the middle of nowhere, but that story also is happening during the Second World War. At first, the characters of the movie are not really affected by the conflict, but that changes as the movie progresses. What makes this movie especially unique is the way the war is portrayed. There are no big heroes in that story, but nobody is also demonized. Even the group of Nazi soldiers is portrayed as a group of small boys who are lost and looking for their way home. The director of the movie, Jiří Menzel, said, "Many movies, whether they want it or not, idealize the war." Right about the same time Closely Watched Trains came out, another Czech movie won an Oscar, The Shop on the Main Street from 1965. Film critics would later call it one of the most moving dramas about Holocaust. The main story revolves around a man called Tono, who is a carpenter in a small town. His big problem is his wife, who is forcing him to earn more money by collaborating with Nazis. Tono doesn't really find such ways towards wealth very attractive, but eventually is pushed to Aryanize one small local shop that is owned by an old Jewish woman. The two bond, and the viewer sees their friendship growing stronger and stronger. It's a very moving story about a simple man who doesn't really care about the ideological games around him, but is eventually forced by the circumstances to decide and act. When you're reading this book, you stumble upon the name Milos Forman quite a few times. Of course, it's a very famous Czech director. He made such famous movies as One Flew Over Cuckoo's Nest and Amadeus. And it's a pity because we cannot include these movies on this list because he filmed them already after he migrated from Czechoslovakia to the United States. But there was one movie that he filmed still here during the times of communism, The Fireman's Ball from 1967. This movie was partially, maybe, one of the reasons why he actually had to leave to the West. It's a dark comedy that takes place during the Fireman's Ball in a small Czech village. During the ball, the prize is supposed to be given to the representative of volunteer firefighters. And there's also a raffle for rare foods and goods, because during the time of communism, some of these items were considered to be luxurious, so people couldn't just get them anywhere. And there's also a beauty pageant. But as the movie moves forward, we found out that some of the prizes from the raffle were stolen because the firefighters were too invested in the beauty pageant. And there are other things that don't go as planned. But you will find out later when you will watch the movie. Generally speaking, this movie is a critique of the moral decline of the Sovieticized society and also of the corrupted leadership. Another thing that makes this movie quite intriguing is that Milos Forman actually used a lot of non-actors, which makes it pretty natural and realistic. Our next movie is called The Ear. This film was made shortly after the occupation of Czechoslovakia in 1968 by the Warsaw Pact countries, and people could only see this movie after 20 years. The Ear exposed political persecutions during the times of communism. And if you like psychological thrillers, you need to watch this movie. Ludwig and Anna, the two characters of the movie, live in a very nice apartment in a good neighborhood. Ludwig is a highly positioned man in the ruling apparatus of Communist Party of Czechoslovakia. And one day as they return home, they notice that the gate to their house is open, and at first they wave it off as an accident, but then they start to notice more weird things. Electricity goes off, the phone doesn't work, and Ludwig and Anna start to suspect that they're followed by the secret police. Anyway, it's time to enter the world of the stop-motion animation. And this movie is from Jan Schwankmajer, Alice. Alice is the only living character in the movie that sometimes transforms into porcelain doll. Basically, you can understand this movie as what if Alice in Wonderland was happening in Czechoslovakia. The movie is filled with Czechoslovak household objects, and sometimes they're cute, sometimes they're terrifying. To understand how different this movie is from the original, let's compare one of the most famous scenes there where Alice meets the White Rabbit for the first time. If you're a fan of Tim Burton or David Lynch, this movie is a must-watch. Probably one of the most joyful, most stylish and most psychedelic movies of the 60s is the movie Daisies. Two protagonists, both named Mary, decide to defy the norms of society and set out on a journey full of adventures and anti-phallic gags. Mary trick and use people for their own benefit and pleasure without any moral repercussions. But girls just want to have fun attitude leads them to unexpected places. People call this movie crazy, feminist, aggressive slapstick comedy, which isn't shying away from serious topics. And before we get to our last movie, that was named the best movie in the Czech cinematic history, we have to talk about this one, Buttoners. When you start watching this movie, you might not even realize that it's a Czech movie. The movie takes you on board of the heavy bomber Enola Gay.
171256, you are approaching target number 1, sector Kokura.
Despite the dark topic, it's actually a comedy that intertwines different stories of pretty strange characters. A man who excels at spitting on train, cab driver that has to deal with lustful passengers, bunch of people with weird fetishes, like removing buttons from sofa with fake teeth, and a ghost of the pilot who regrets to be involved in bombing of Hiroshima.
And then?
And then? Guilt? I don't know yet.
Oh, and by the way, if you've been to Prague, you've probably seen these weird sculptures. Yeah, well, actually, the author of these sculptures, David Černý, is also in the movie. So yeah, needless to say, this movie looks very interesting and you definitely need to give it a watch. It's time to take a look at the best Czech film of all times. That is a title that was given to this film in 1998 by the Committee of Czech Movie Critics and also representatives of film industry. This film takes place in Middle Ages, in 13th century Bohemian forests, where pagans are moving towards Christianity. Be aware that this movie was labeled as masterful art piece that is unfit for commercial distribution, meaning it's visually stunning, but it's The main character is about to enter a monastery when she's kidnapped and sexually abused by a pagan warrior. I know it sounds terrible, but what actually people appreciate about the movie is the artistic approach of the director. The way the movie is shot allows us to explore the psychological world of the main character through the camera. And the atmosphere and the environment of the movie are compared to the movies of such great directors as Akira Kurosawa and Ingmar Bergman. Okay, that's it guys. Which one of those movies would you actually watch? Maybe a movie is missing from our list? Let us know in the comments. Thank you for watching and see you next week. Bye!